It's time. Time to repair. Time to restore. Time to revive. It's time for the Cure National Policy Summit 2017.
Well, we want to welcome you tonight. Thank you so much for coming to Cure and to Washington, D.C. So first of all, welcome you to Washington, D.C. And appreciate you coming. And there'll be more that will be joining. I know some that are still arriving and still coming in. And so we want to just give you a warm Washington, D.C. welcome. I could say that authentically, being a native Washingtonian, which is one of the rare breeds, even though I did see one of the guys out here not too long ago, one of the reverends out here telling me that he was from D.C. and where he was born in won't mention those words, but that 19. But we want to genuinely thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. Thank you for coming to the Cure Policy Summit in 2017. And we're excited about it. We have a great lineup for you. We're going to put some real rubber on your shoes, and we're going to work a little bit for the next 72 hours, if that's all right with you all. And we take this very seriously as far as you coming and putting on this. This is a huge undertaking, and it is one of the ways that we feel at Cure that it is essential to continue to educate, equip, and engage, and really serve clergy and serve people who are out there on the front lines day after day, serving in our hard-hit communities and our communities across this country. And it is imperative that we are able to really support, serve you, as they used to say, love on you a little bit, but really this is an opportunity to give you some information and put some things in your hand and put tools in your hand and put resources and people in your hand around you that can really help you to navigate through the things that you see. There's not a day that goes by that I'm sure many of you are just like me. If you drive a few blocks, if you drive some of our areas in our cities, first there's a quick recognition that, this generation really needs a revival. And we need a opportunity that people are won to the Lord and that their lives are dramatically changed by the incredible infusion of Christ in our life. Once we accept him, everything changes. But those people's lives can change communities, can change cultures, can change countries, and even our cities. And so we see those really challenging statistics that are happening every single day. If you're going through some of our communities, you're wondering, man, this area looks like this. Why? And for what reason? And why is it like this over and over again, year after year after year? If I go just a few miles from here, there are some communities that I look at sometimes when I drive through, and not too long ago, my sons were with me, and they said, man, why does it look like this everywhere we go, every block? And some of the blocks are boarded up, and the houses are boarded, and things like that. And so we see that abject poverty and challenge in the communities, and we want to figure out, how can we change this? What are the great ways to change this in our country? And I believe that God gives us that opportunity to do things on our watch. And so we have to be diligent about how we spend our time on our watch. And I know many of you are serving in churches across this great country and are doing a phenomenal job. And we applaud you for that, absolutely. I think that's a tremendous thing. And really, I would say, give yourself a round of applause with somebody next to you and say, thank you for your service. We have people every day that, may have served in the military, and you have people that say, thank you for your service, but you guys are really doing the real heavy lifting of a lot of work in our community. So tonight, without further ado, one of the things I want to do is introduce, hopefully everybody enjoying themselves so far? It's okay? Okay, good. Hopefully you can get a few more things. If you need to grab something to eat or get something to drink, that's fine. We couldn't do this without incredible sponsors that help us through this process. One of those sponsors tonight, and we have a couple of their representatives here, but we have the president of Liberty Health Share, and I want to invite him to come up and share a few words, but it's Dale Bellis. And as Dale Bellis is coming up, which I saw Dale, there you go, I know I saw him. kind of hard with the lights shining on you. But Dale Bellis has been an incredible partner with us, with Liberty Health Share, and we are, and they have been great people. And so let Dale tell you a little bit about it. We'll talk to you more. There'll be some material that they'll have as well, because Kristen Varley is here as well from Liberty Health Share. And so throughout the course of this time, you're going to hear from some of our sponsors, but Dale is one, and we appreciate him. Dale Bellis.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, sir.
What if the church, the body of Christ, rose up and united together and solved the healthcare crisis in America? What if the body of Christ decided to apply its own biblical teachings and principles and solved the healthcare crisis to the view and vision of the entire nation? That is the vision and purpose and passion of Liberty Health Share. To draw the men and women of the body of Christ together in unity, regardless of denomination or background or creed or race or whatever it is that ordinarily would divide us, and bring us together in unity to pay each other's medical bills. You would have an opportunity with Liberty Health Share every month to contribute to another member who has medical bills. Your dollars move from an online secure account directly to theirs. You message them with cheer, encouragement, or prayer. And those doctors and hospitals are paid by the fellow members. We do that to the tune of about $16 to $18 million every month. And so we're meeting the needs based upon the Bible's call to bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. I invite you to consider that option and opportunity for you, yourself personally, for the members of your churches, for those that you know, and investigate the opportunity available through Liberty Health Share to not only meet your own costs, but allow your dollars to be served in ministry to another person every month. The best place to go is to our website, libertyhealthshare.org. Thank you for the joy and privilege of supporting the cause of cure. We identify and relate so much to your vision and passion. And Pastor Derek, God bless you. Love you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dale. We really appreciate that. They're doing incredible work. Great job. One of the things that I'll tell you that I tell everybody when they come. When you come to the summit, you got to have an open mind and an open heart. If you got an open mind and open heart and understand that there are unique solutions that are out here that we could learn, I think that's where you're going to get some real take back when you leave out of here on Wednesday. You're going to get some real take back and say, wow, I've learned more information. I have real tools. And we're trying to put you not only in front of sponsors, but also in front of people. But even just that one thing. How do you deal with healthcare? How do you work through your health sharing environment? This is a phenomenal way to think about solutions differently, because the way that we've been doing stuff, how many know the way that we're currently doing stuff might not be working too well? Now, I don't know about you, but I can talk about what he just talked about for a while. But if we continue doing the same thing, expecting different results, that's the definition of? Come on. So I think we all have to think about the things that you're going to hear over the course of the next 72 hours. People like this that are going to come up and challenge us and talk to us. But I challenge you. Think about some of these things. Make them resonate in your heart, but think about ways that you can implement, execute, and how it's going to change the way you think on some of these ideas, because a lot of us get an opportunity to just hear a few news snippets here and there, and that's what we listen to, whether it be in our variety of CNN, Fox, ABC, CBS, whatever you want to do. We get a few minutes. The national news says we get about 7 to 8 minutes, the average person, of listening to that, and that's how they capture most of their information. So I'm here to tell you, you're going to get a little bit more than that during this time. And that's going to be eye-opening for you, because not everything you read or not everything you see on TV is true. Somebody told me that years ago. So You'll hear my commentary throughout the next time, so y'all got to get used to me. Next, I want to invite, before I do that, let me just show you a quick video that we put together that kind of gives a little bit of perspective about Cure and some of the things that we've been doing. And some of y'all may have seen this. It's on our website, but can we play that real quick? Good to go.
Here's what federal spending of $900 billion annually has produced for Black America. Let's let these numbers sink in. Single-parent households have tripled since 1970. 75% of our Black children are in fatherless homes. That's right, 75%. 685,000 of our babies are aborted every year. 50% of Black teenagers are unemployed. 43% of the prison population is Black. The poverty rates among Black has not changed in decades, but cities like Detroit, St. Louis, Oakland, Baltimore, and many others are in ruins. Instead of helping, bad policies and billions of dollars have spread a sickness in our Black communities. It's time for a cure. Cure is a coalition of new voices with new ideas that will become new policies. We are the Cure. The Center for Urban Renewal and Education, headquartered in Washington, D.C., Cure works with churches, political, and business leaders on behalf of urban communities. Cure's mission is to address issues of culture, race, and poverty from a Judeo-Christian perspective. Cure. Join with us. There has never been a better time to help Black communities.
Here's a quick overview. Well, I normally play a video, and I'm not going to do it at this moment. I'm just going to introduce this wonderful person who has been laboring for quite some years. She has an incredible story. She's written several books. One is Uncle Sam's Plantation. I think you have that in your packets, perhaps. The other side, though, is that through a story, and then how I always talk about it is through an interaction of faith, somebody really challenging her about her own personal life when she was trapped on welfare, doing things that weren't necessarily right and living right. Somebody really confronted her in her own life and about her lifestyle. So that's the faith aspect and interaction. Applying principles of freedom and personal responsibility, she began to take her names off the welfare roll. She could tell you her own story, even the abortion she's had and some of the other things that have gone on. But she took responsibility after that time, and God really began to change her entire life. Thus so that several years later, after she began to work on welfare reform back in the first revision during the Clinton administration, one of the things that took place is that, hey, she went to just a few pastors and said, would you want to know what to do after welfare reform? What next? Hoping that only a few pastors would show up, maybe 25 or so in California at that point. Over 400 showed up, and that was really the inception of Cure. But really, it's the labor and the hard work of Star Parker, our president and founder, that we want to talk to you about. She's been championing a lot of these issues for years, and we just want to welcome her and invite her up to the mic. She'll introduce some of our great board members.
Thank you, Elijah. And now we have our Elisha. And so I am getting ready to retire. No, I'm not. And I'm not going to speak to you about why we're here right now. My slot is on Wednesday. And I'm so honored and just so humbled that all of you are taking these days to come out here and find out what we can do together to turn these trends around and help people fix their lives. I'm in housing projects all over this country. I speak, in fact, just last week I was with girls they're in the juvenile detention program, 14 years old, and I shared my story. And I told them, as I tell all of these youth all across the country every time I'm in front of them, is that their fate, the set of circumstances that they were born into, is not their destiny. And I'm a living witness. And what we are going to do together is help people realize that destiny that God has called them to by getting them on track in the little bit of opportunity we have to speak into their lives through public policy so that they can get into the richness of the Lord. Why I'm here right now is to introduce you to our board. This incredible work is done through our sponsors, with our board, with our donors. God has blessed us to have now realized over 2,500 regular supporters who send their money to Cure as a nonprofit 501c3 organization so that we can distribute this money, these ideas to you. There are people in this country that are benevolent enough that say, this is our mission work here. Similar to a missionary that goes abroad and then they come back, they raise the funds, and then they go abroad again. That's what's happening here. There are people that are the supporters of, sometimes I say I'm like Jonah. I got to get into Nineveh, but I need a boat. And our donors come to the table for that. Under the leadership of our current board chairman, John Bedrosian, we've been able to pull together a very successful board. John is not able to be with us. He is almost 82 now, and his health is a challenge, and I hope you will keep him in your prayers. The reason that he does this work is because he's Armenian by heritage, and his mom at 17 was put on a boat because the Turks were after the Armenians and slaughtering them, and came to America. His dad was on another boat at 17 years old and came to America. And then they met and they married and they gave him a quality education to the point that he was able to endow at USC, the University of Southern California, their policy center. It's called the Bedrosian Center. And he looks at his life now on that big hill up in Bel Air and says, if I can do it through a quality education, then surely the guys that we just talked about and the girls that we just talked about in our video, they can do it. What we have to do is fight for them. And so I just really wanted to acknowledge him and his wife Judy and remind you, keep them in your prayers as they're struggling through his heart operation over the next week. John, as soon as he accepted the position to be the chairman of the board 2 years ago, immediately tapped his Elisha, and his name is Mark Little, an attorney in Los Angeles. Mark is now the vice chair of CURE's board. I didn't know I needed a vice chair of a board. In fact, I didn't know I needed a board. I didn't know. I said, only the law says you need a board. I'm like, well, wait. When they asked me, well, what about your board? I'm like, Jesus didn't have a board. How come I have to have a board? So God has said, you need a board so that we can so that you can figure out how to do what God has asked you to do. I know the why to do it, but we have a how to do it. And so under leadership, even today, at our board meeting of Mark Little, he is with us. I'd like to acknowledge you, Mark, if you would please stand up and let them applaud you for the incredible work that you're doing. Many of you may even be familiar with his pastor as Bishop Ulmer. Kenny Ulmer, I've known for 35 years from Los Angeles, and he's been serving him well as an attorney in Los Angeles, and actually is one of the instruments God used to bring the Rams back to Los Angeles. So I don't know how you feel about that. If you don't like it, then talk to Mark. I don't know if they can win anything. I don't know anything about sports. My teams are the only two teams in my area of expertise. One's red and one's blue, and go red team. Bob Borens has served CURE for the last 20 years and helped me shape many of these ideas, but he is also Orthodox Jewish, and 5 years ago he aliyah'd, so he's in Israel, and they're in their holiday, so he is not with us. Tanner Sherwood is with us, one of my amazing board members. I just so appreciate Tanner. He's been on the board, 3 years now? Has it been 3 years or 4? How many years you been on that board? 4 years now. 4 years, Tanner has served on the board. I still reside in Orange County, California. That's where my home of residency is, even though I work here in Washington, D.C. Some say I left Sodom to go to Gomorrah. They're about right about that. But at least in Sodom, we know we're crazy. If this is Gomorrah, they don't. They think they're God. But Tanner has also decided, in looking at Orange County, an incredible, safe place where most things work because we've been able to keep the government very, very limited and towns very, very small, so they're very, very accountable, it's been trending liberal. And she has decided to leave CURE's board to pay more attention to home. There's no need of losing home while you're out trying to save the world. And I appreciate that she's going to do that because since I still live there, I would like for it to be saved when I get back. And so I do have a little gift that I would like to give to Tana as just a symbol of appreciation, just a little token as a symbol of appreciation. Oh, thank you. Tana, I had to hide it because these designers now put their name all over everything they do, so if she saw it, she would know who it was from, and I didn't want that. But just Tana, thank you. we've become wonderful friends, and she's brought some tremendous energy and finances to this work. Angela Mentor is also with us, one of our board members. Angela is an incredible friend, Sisters for Life. She runs in Louisville, Kentucky. Angela is a businesswoman by trade, top of her game, and then God said, go save some babies. And what happened just the other day out in front of the clinic where they spend most of their time declaring to those women and men, it may be legal, but it's not lawful in the eyes of God. He has so much more for you. The other day had a tremendous save. Not only did she save the baby, save the family, but God saved them all because they led them to the Lord, and she sends them out a report. And so I'm very appreciative for her personal work and our friendship, and keep her family in your prayers. They had a tremendous tragedy just recently, and it's heavy on all of our hearts as they work their way through finding out what the Lord is doing in that particular case. We know the scripture says when he seems hidden, we reach deeper for him. And very few are chosen, according to the scripture that says we want to know him and the power of his resurrection share. But the next part of that is then to enter into the fellowship of his suffering. And there are very few that are chosen to enter that part of Christian reality at such a deep level when there is a child involved, a young man who is at the top of his game, just a brilliant, just getting ready to go to college and got a horrible sickness. So please keep my Angela in your prayers. James Golden, I think he may have had to go back to Florida. He left. I would like to acknowledge T.W. Shannon. T.W. Shannon, some of you know, may recognize the name because he was for a while the Speaker of the House for the great state of Oklahoma. He has just recently taken a position as a president of a bank in Oklahoma, so he is not here with us. Dr. William Allen, I've known for 35 years or so, and you will hear from him a little bit later. He's actually going to keynote and bring what God has put on his heart. Not only as a professor, used to serve as on the U.S. Commission for Civil Rights, but also is a minister, and God has called him to do this incredible work, and a leading challenger in my life when we started talking about policy to make sure that I'm thinking correctly according to the scriptures when I throw some wild idea on the table. Virginia Thomas, is Jeannie here? Is she able to make it either? Virginia Thomas has been serving on our board for maybe 7 years now. Some of you might not know Jeannie, but you would know her husband. He's our Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, and we are very, very honored for her on our board. And she says, if nothing else, just use my name. And I said, the reason I like to use your name on there is because it keeps me straight and makes sure that I know every decision that I make could affect an incredible Supreme Court Justice. So I'm very, very responsible by that. And that's one of the reasons that I can live a chaste single life, because I look at the cost if I don't. John Strauss, I believe Don is in the room. John Strauss, another one of our board members, his wife, Bonnie, have become very, very dear friends of mine. They're from Dallas, Texas, and I just so appreciate John. I so appreciate Bonnie and their family, and we're just honored that you would even take the time to be here, even though his wife is having a few little problems in her health, and you want to keep her in your prayer. And then Carlton Smith is a new member of the board. Our board chairman said we have to get a pastor on the board. I'm like, and which one would you think I should choose? And so he said, one that probably doesn't have his own church at the moment, but that can bring that type of depth to the board so that we can get a better understanding of the psyche and the mind of those that are serving in these communities so that we can serve you well. And then Philip Liberatore, who is not able to make it, is a CPA out of Los Angeles that I've known for 30 years, and he has actually agreed to be on our board as well. So I just wanted to let you know that we are not alone in this work. Oh, Carlton, he said, you have to stand up, dude. I know, I see he waved, but they want to see you. All right. When I was asked to say exactly why I was nominating Carlton for the board, in addition to his long resume, which may be in your program, I said because Carlton and LaWanda are like a spiritual covering for me. I don't always make it to my church. And the church I go to here when I'm in Washington, D.C., is not a spiritual covering where I can have that accountability. And if I have any kind of question that anything is provoking me to thought, when I'm reading through the scriptures every morning, I know that I can text him and he answers it. If he didn't already thought about it, then he will look it up and then send me 10 scriptures to study and read so that I can get the heart of the Lord on these most pressing issues. Every single question that we're going to be addressing over the next 2 days, the answer is in the Bible. We just have to search it out. And so sometimes I have to, I don't know exactly where it is. And so he's one of those searcher-outers, and his wife is a tremendous prayer warrior, and so she keeps me covered and bathed in prayer, and so I do appreciate that as well. I want to thank you again for coming. I think that, as Derek said, you are going to have some thought-provoking opportunities, and that's why you're here. We deliberately target the clergy because we believe if the clergy that are invested in Scripture, notice not all clergy are invited. No, it takes time to find someone that has a biblical worldview. And so we have been accumulating and trying to build relationships with pastors all over this country who have a biblical worldview, because we know that if we can reach that pastor who has a biblical worldview and put information in front of him to where he understands that the sanctity of life is as sacred as the sanctity of property and vice versa, then we could change things in our country, because property is really dear to God's heart, and he talks about it very often in Scripture, and that's one of the reasons that our journey is to dismantle the welfare state. A charity belongs to the church. It belongs to local communities. It doesn't belong to a one-size-fits-all government. When God saw poverty and hunger, and people asked him, what should we do? He didn't say, go have the Romans set up a food stamp program. He said, bring them to me and you feed them. So that's what we're journeying to do. And I so appreciate each and every one of you. Some I don't know at all. Others I keep seeing year after year. I just so appreciate what he's getting ready to do with us and for us over the next couple of years because of this window of opportunity to really put our case in front of the country so that we can start turning our communities around. Touch one, touch all, Mother Teresa said. Change one, change the world. And that's what we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Star. And thank you for everybody, all the board members and all the wonderful people that are here. I wanted to take a couple minutes because we got a great young man here that is joined the Cure team early this year in January. He came on board. His name is Reverend Timothy Lateef. And so everybody can say hi, Tim. There you go. Look at that. Great crowd. Great crowd. But I wanted to take a few moments with Tim here before we do our next side. And as you notice, Timothy's a couple years younger than me. He might be, a couple years younger than some of y'all here too. But as you are looking at him, he's I think about the work that we're doing at Cure, what we're trying to talk about. And, he knows over this, we did a press conference not too long ago trying to just push the aspect and the agenda of we really need to focus on fixing the inner cities. And not too long ago, we did this planned press conference to talk about that issue. Well, Charlottesville happened over the weekend. And when Charlottesville happened over the weekend, guess what? The press wanted to hear about Charlottesville. It wasn't necessarily about fixing your inner cities or any of your communities. It was about Charlottesville. And when we did the Charlottesville aspect of things, Tim began to hear a lot of feedback from that one press conference and saw how it kind of played out. And I've been kind of talking to you. So, Tim, as you have heard some of these things, and I thought this would be good for you guys, what do you think about kind of the work we're doing at Cure? Why would you come to a place like this, being so young and thinking about these kind of issues?
Sure. Well, the work we're doing is valuable. And first of all, thank all of you for being here. The beautiful thing about accepting a call that God has placed on your life is that you don't have to wait 10, 20 years to accept that. The moment that God calls you, you can automatically decide, Lord, I want to surrender my life completely to what you're calling me to do. And so what Cure is doing is so important, is so valuable, And one thing about, I would say last year, God began to move in my heart to say, I really want you to be engaged in areas of being a voice, of speaking biblical truth and not being ashamed of the gospel. I came across Reverend McCoy, and I said, Lord, if there's a way that I can connect, if you can hook that up, I want to be able to do that. Our paths crossed, and we've been serving together. And the reason why this is so important is because other individuals within my generation need to be able to see that you can surrender your life to the Lord, follow the plans and purpose that He has for you, and do it right away. And when you're able to do that, I stand here before you as a young man. My parents are here that have been married for over 30 years. I have a beautiful wife that will be married going on 4 years in October. I've been able to complete my master's degree, go ahead and buy a home, do all of these pieces before the age of 30. And so that's not to the honor and glory of me, but to God. And so I'm here to be able to be a voice to say that there are other individuals within my generation that we have to be able to do that as well.
Oh, good. Don't go nowhere. Don't go nowhere. Now, that's good. I love you saying you got to be a voice, got to do this stuff. When you heard about me, what was I doing that kind of stirred you?
Sure. At that time, I'll be a little real with you guys. I was about 2 in the morning. I was relaxing, just watching Netflix. Yeah, I don't know if y'all watch Netflix sometimes. Well, okay, but anyway.
These are holy.
All right, these are holy. Okay, but anyway, I was watching a documentary, came across Reverend McCoy and other pastors in this room that were standing up for traditional marriage in the state of Maryland. It's 2 in the morning. My heart is burning. I tried to tap my wife, but she didn't want to be bothered at 2 in the morning. I said, look, you got to see what's going on. What touched my heart is when I saw the opposing side, I saw a lot of young faces. When I saw Reverend McCoy's side and individuals with him, I didn't see any younger faces in that crew. At that moment, my heart began to burn to say, I need to be a part of that. What Reverend McCoy did in that moment is he was standing up for biblical truth. He was standing up for righteousness. A lot of times when you look at an individual within our generation, sometimes you think maybe we need to be relevant, or maybe we need to find a way to communicate with them. If you stand up for what's right, it will draw the generation to stand up for what is right as well. And that's what took me to come to this place and to stand here before you now.
I almost feel like you need to say that again, but I get you. Hopefully you all heard that. It was not, you can tell me if I'm right, it wasn't that, we're being too anti-culture. Standing up for marriage nowadays, that's like cutting across culture. But so it wasn't that wasn't being the thing, right? No. It was the issue that we began to, you heard the voice. See, I've said this oftentimes, tell me what you think. I've said that there's a vacuum of people, of leadership. And I believe that young people want to hear real voices, truthful voices. And if they hear those voices, they can cling on to that and say, that's what I follow. But they get sucked in another way. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that they are able, myself included, and this is very important coming from the perspective of the church. We do a lot of things to attract individuals, but there is nothing we need to do to enhance the gospel of Jesus Christ. Jesus alone by himself is everything that we need. And so because of that, if we're able to stand for what is right, then we're able to produce individuals in this generation that will be able to stand for what is right. And so you're building a strong foundation.
Wow, that's good. That's good. Man, that's good. That's good stuff, man. Well, you're going to hear more from him, hopefully, over the course of these next couple of days. I can go on for a while and talking to him, not just because he works for me, but I will say this. And where's his wonderful wife? His wife, there you go. Stand if you can, just to give him a little wave. There you go. That's his better half. She's a phenomenal woman, and we so appreciate her, and thank you for letting him come to us and share this time. Get a little dirty, And because I think, too, in the most recent thing when we were in Charlottesville, you heard the news vacuum on both sides. Tell me real quick, and I'll ask you this as the last question, but tell me your thoughts in terms of all the news cycles you heard. Do you feel like they were accurate? What were people kind of saying on different points? And then kind of what do you feel like some of the truth was about some of these different things?
Sure. One thing that I'm learning, and as you mentioned about the news, is that everyone has an agenda. Everyone has an agenda. And the interesting thing about working at Cure is that we have the media on all day long, and we have different channels that are side by side. And it's so interesting to hear throughout the day different pieces to the same story. And so there came a point with me during this dialogue that I had to say, what do I believe in? What do I believe is really true? And as you hear these different pieces that come forth, they're able to begin to create what I feel is staying as close as possible to a biblical worldview. And so I heard a lot of different perspectives. I heard a lot of different things. But one thing I look for, and I'll conclude with this, is what is the motive? What is the heart that is driving individuals? What is behind what is being said? And at Cure, I hope and I pray that as we raise men and women of God in a clergy network, that individuals will sense, no matter the topic, no matter what's going on, they sense the love of God. They sense not just positivity, but there's something different about these clergy leaders that are drawing people to truth.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Lateef. Appreciate that from him. And again, he'll be around. He'll be a great servant for you guys in terms of anything you need. If we can help you all throughout the process, just let us know. Tap him on the shoulder. We will try to attend to whatever is necessary. We have more people that will be joining us tomorrow. Before I introduce Dr. William Allen, who has traveled all over the place and has been doing quite a bit of things that have been just phenomenal. Matter of fact, he is featured, once you get your Catalyst magazine, he is the feature of the Catalyst magazine for this edition that's coming out. And but before that, let me just play, I want to set this up real quick. They're about to play a video. I came across this video, and hopefully it will help you understand a couple of things and how we should be thinking, even as you go through these next, like I said, 72 hours or so. Back in 1965, Daniel Patrick Moynihan came out with a report. We hear that sometimes, right? And you hear, well, we're about 53 years away from that when he, what is this, it's 52 years away when he actually came out with some of these reports. And he talked about the travesty that was happening, especially within the black family. And really, when we talk about black families and those kinds of statistics, here's the deal. Latino families are right behind. Anglo families are not too far behind that. So what you find is, unfortunately, African Americans have led the trait and led the census or the data on some of the bad statistics. And this is some of the things that we really have to fix. If you go back at Lyndon B. Johnson and talking about how he began this whole aspect of saying, well, if we just give them something, just give them a little something, something, and I'm going to paraphrase some words, and I'm not going to use them all tonight, but they'll stay with us forever, and they'll vote with us forever. And really, while this session is really not about which way you vote or not, it's really about an understanding, though, of a mindset, a condition. When you think about poverty, it's a condition. It's not just that I'm broke for $5 right now, but it's a condition. It was addressed in Scripture, and it's a mindset. Some people in here probably call it the poverty spirit, but it's a mindset that actually happens. But if you think about some of those aspects, these are things that we have to look at in our current culture and really look at how do we fix these things, how do we challenge it, and if we're the people that God has called as vanguards and on the watch and watchmen on the wall, then we got to think about those aspects. So let's play this video. You can see what I'm talking about. It's only a few short minutes, 3 or 4, and then we'll have Dr. William Allen, who I'll introduce in just a moment.
Our government, which conducts detailed surveys of everything from sugar beets in Colorado to social habits in Cambodia, had never before taken a close look at the 21 million Negroes of America. Daniel Moynihan, until this summer Assistant Secretary of Labor, was in charge of the study and was staggered by it. Moynihan says the Negro family structure is collapsing, and we asked him the reasons.
The first is, remember that American slavery was the worst slavery the world has ever known. We can't get that into our heads because the standard of living of the slaves was high, perhaps. We don't see how awful it was. We deprived them of the sacraments as Christians. We deprived them of any institutions as family life. We deprived them of any rights as human beings. There's a very long and complicated history, but we did. There's no other slavery like it in history. And there was no Negro family at all in the slave world. About a quarter of Negro families are headed by women. The divorce rate is 2.5 times what it is. And all the number of fatherless children keeps growing. And all these things getting worse, not better, over recent years. It's not a matter of a bad situation that doesn't improve, but rather a bad situation that worsens. Got to get that clear. It's getting worse. How'd you learn how to behave? From your father and your mother and your older sisters, maybe, and the people around you. Well, supposing there is no father, or if he is a father, he doesn't work, where there is no education, where there's no sense of getting ahead, where children are just brought up without any of that support which a family gives it, then what do you end up with?
"72% of children being born in African-American communities to single parents is a frightening number."
Daniel Patrick Moynihan in his report said that 29% of African-American children being born into out-of-wedlock households was a travesty. So if 29% is a travesty in 1965, what is 72% in 2013?
I wish I'd had a father who was around and involved.
The government is taking the burden of taking care of their children from the black man. The government is the daddy of the family.
If you have laws that encourage people on welfare to not have a man in the home, then guess what? People on welfare are not going to have a man in the home. It's a pretty disturbing epidemic.
It is beyond catastrophic.
Pretty hard hitting. In a LA Times survey not too long ago, 30 years ago, and the LA Times did this with the American Enterprise Institute, but they compared some statistics from '85 and 2016, work and welfare. Looking back at then, a majority, 51%, showed workfare. In 1985, 36% had not heard enough about it to say, and today in 2016, a work requirement has strong support, meaning putting work as a requirement for getting off welfare and actually receiving that. And that's including support among the poor, 81%. 59% of all respondents in 1985 and 54% in 2016 say welfare benefits make people dependent and encourage them to stay poor. In 2016, the poor are divided about whether benefits encourage dependency. 41% or give poor people a chance to get started again and stand on their own 2 feet. That's what 41% think actually happens. So it's an interesting anomaly that takes place, so I'm not going to go into the further statistics, but you get the idea. We are still in need of a lot of work. We still need to repair our cities. We need to repair, we need to restore, we need to revive. That's the theme. But without that, I want to say Professor William Allen is a professor of political science, or has been a professor of political science and philosophy at Michigan State University. He's emeritus, I believe, now, but he's a senior visiting scholarship at the Matthew J. Ryan Center for Study of Free Institutions and Public Good at Villanova University. He has served as the Ann and Herbert Bond Visiting Fellow at James Madison Program on American Ideals and Institution at Princeton University. His areas of expertise include the American founding and U.S. Constitution, the American founders, particularly George Washington, the influence of various political philosophers, especially Montesquieu. Is that correct, Dr. Allen? Thank you. On the American, on the American founding, liberal arts education, its history, importance and problems, and the intersection of race and politics. Not only that, he has served on the commission, the National Commission for Humanities, and member of the chairman of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. And Dr. Allen is also an ordained minister and an incredible man who serves all the time and stays on the go. He talks over this country, around this country nationally. So we wanted to get one of our own board members and say, hey, look, Dr. Allen, would you speak to us tonight, please, sir? Thank you. Let's welcome Dr. Allen.
When I listen to Reverend McCoy, I sometimes think I'm watching a football game with the same team on both sides. I feel like a cheerleader. I come to cheer on because all the action's on the field, and Derek is in the field, and Star is in the field, and the staff is in the field, and all of you are in the field. I didn't determine to bring you a specific agenda this evening for one reason. You have an agenda, you have a task. And therefore it befalls me only to remind you of that task. But I want to do so in a very special way by reminding us all of something which is probably as much true of everyone seated here as it is true of me. When we listen to the litany of statistics of ravages in our communities, we're not listening to an abstract presentation of what happens in a distant land. We're listening to what has happened to us. Those who suffer in ways you have heard so eloquently described are our own. It is certainly true in my family. Whatever the issue is, from abortion to single-parent families to imprisonment to failed education to government dependency, I've known each and every one closely. I'm emphasizing that to you because so often as I travel this country and I talk about the important issues that confront us all, I encounter people who look at me and look at my immediate family and look at the success of my children and who respond by saying, "What do you know of the urban community?" As though I wasn't born like everybody else. As though I didn't have to grow into maturity, emerging from circumstances of want, forging in the face of segregation and deprivation a way, and providing for my family. I'm not mentioning these things in order to puff myself up. What I'm doing is saying, what I have been through, you have been through. And indeed, most people in this country, and certainly most American blacks, have been through. So we are not talking about what we want to do for those people over there. We're talking about us. We haven't forgotten where we came from. We bear a weighty, weighty mandate. The mandate that is conveyed in Psalm 37:23, the A portion. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. So we aren't standing here this evening and in the days to come proclaiming some new path. We're proclaiming an old faith. And the more stoutly we stand on that old faith, the more certainly we will communicate it to others. And why do we want to do that? One of the issues which you may not get to spend as much time talking about in this session as we did last year and on other occasions is the issue of criminal justice reform. We have seen how important it is to rethink and recalibrate the way we deal with criminality from minor to major, because the system became dysfunctional. I say that being very painfully aware that people who get locked up, by and large, deserve to be locked up. They've done something wrong. But it is also true that when there are children who have done something wrong, we ought to lock them up with care still to try to raise them up, rather than simply abandoning them. My daughter's newest book, Cuz, has only recently been released. It's the story of my nephew, who was being raised in Los Angeles, found himself on the wrong side when he was yet only 14 years of old, drifting into the world of Crips and Bloods, eventually staging a hijacking as part of his initiation, apparently, being convicted and sent away. 11 years was the time he spent away. Now, what's important about this story is that those 11 years represented the years in which he came to maturity without essential direction and support. And only the support and affection that he gained from those with whom he associated behind bars. It is not difficult to imagine what the outcome of that was. And thus, when he was murdered a few years after his release from prison by the closest of those associates that he had in prison, it was a matter of enormous sadness in my family. And my daughter's story is a recounting of how great that was, because we had become aware that this was a young man of true gift that went undeveloped, simply undeveloped. And my daughter did something, and this is the really reason I'm telling you this story. In writing this very, very personal story, not just personal for our family, but especially for her, because she, of all of us, became most involved in trying to assist Michael once he was released and through the time he was incarcerated. But she began asking herself the question, why? And whether we had done enough. I don't know if you've been there yet, but it is an exquisite kind of torture to ask yourself, did I do enough? This is true in personal matters. It is no less true in cultural matters. in the affairs of this country. And so what I'm emphasizing to you now is that just as my family is even at this moment living through this deep, retrospective, painful review of who we are and what we did and why it didn't suffice. And even though we have a perfect awareness that no matter how often you preach salvation, it doesn't fall on us to save every soul. We don't save, we only witness. Not even those closest to us can we claim to save, we can only witness. But we still ask ourselves, did we witness sufficiently? Did we stand up every time our name was called? Did we always say, "Here am I," when we were sought? These policy questions that you are dealing with are not questions of politics. These are calls. These are calls from heaven. God is calling for all who will stand forth to come to the rescue, to set things aright where they've gone astray. And so our moment is the moment in which we say, individually and collectively, "Here am I." I have been lately preaching, in a manner of speaking, on what I think to be perhaps the most important question that confronts the United States of America and in this day. And that question is, do we have character sufficient to stay the course? What kind of people are we? Do we have the character that was called for in the founding of this country? A character that could, with open eyes, embrace the reality that this country could only succeed if the people prove worthy of governing themselves. But to prove worthy of governing themselves, they had to prove that they were worthy characters. And let me be very clear. Oftentimes you hear people talking about self-government and how important it is, and all they mean by self-government is majority rule, or some democratic process, or some institutional approach. That's not what I'm talking about. The self-government as the founders understood it, which was enjoined upon the people of this land, was the claim on each self to govern itself, to be subject to principles of moral restraint and direction. We are living a life in which we no longer admit that as a necessity. And so I'm wondering, is it because we have lost the character that was required to make the nation work? As I have traveled and talked about this question, what I've pointed out to people were three things that I think are of central importance. And the first of those things is the underlying principle of the founding of the United States, which is not equality, which is not liberty merely, which is not democracy, but which is the freedom of conscience. It is the freedom of conscience, not only as articulated by founding fathers, James Madison only being the most notable in 1785, but as enjoined upon us by God himself. For what James Madison says about this conscience is this: before any obligation that we have to civil society, we have an obligation to God. And therefore, we ought, in the spirit of Acts 5:29, to obey God rather than man. This was the cornerstone of the building of character that was required in the founding. A people who were stout enough to say no to man when man called for saying no to God. Now, people can only be that stout on one condition. And this is the kicker. This is the key. This is, you might say, the trick to the whole business. They've got to be prepared to say, I don't need your help. Because government's clever. Government will say, when it invites you to do what calls for rejecting God, let me help you. I have a little something to give you. I will open the door for you. I will take away the trials of life. I will render your pathway straight and easy. If only you will join me and say no to God. What we are called to do is to have the strength to say, Mother, I'd rather do it myself. And guess what? It is not as if God didn't provide for our comfort and prosperity. Because it turns out that that's also the best way to accomplish things. Not to turn to government to do it, but to do it ourselves. To answer the bell within our own homes. To answer the bell within our own communities. To build the supportive and encouraging networks that will show us the way when we've lost the way, but always summon us to resume the responsibility for our own lives. You see, some people have argued that it's really important for us to care about those who have the least in the society. This is the second thing. The first was conscience. And I agree with them. We should care about the least. We are summoned to care about the widow, the orphan, and the wayfarer, and the prisoner. Yes, we should care about the least. The ethics of caring is a vitally important part of social interaction. But they have made the argument from caring in such a way as to require of the community to place caring above achievement, above accomplishment, as though it were at all possible to care for anybody in a society that is not productive. For not only from the beginning is there an ethics of caring, there is an ethics of production. What the founding principles aimed for were to provide for the comfort of the least and the potential of the best. And we cannot sacrifice the potential of the best in the name of providing comfort for the least. You see, this is not about capitalism. I want you to hear me clearly. I don't preach capitalism. I'm not preaching the free market. I'm preaching God and man. We require to defend extending opportunities for accomplishment and achievement, recognizing what the individual can do, allowing the individual to say, yes, I built that. Because that's the only way to produce the resources that allow us to provide the comfort for the least, to show caring. Caring consumes resources. Accomplishment produces resources. There is no caring if there is no accomplishment, no production. And it's time for us to let this country know that simple truth. This whole question of redistribution is a falsehood. It's a pretense that you can care without producing anything. Can't be done. Can't be done. And you know, sooner or later, the game is going to be up. Because it's a self-defeating prophecy, isn't it? We're going to spend everything we've got till there's nothing left to spend, and then what? We're going to face the same challenge we had at the beginning. We're on our own. So why not start now? Why not get on our own now? Why wait for the day to come? Why not take control back into our own hands? Why not go into our communities and say, stand up? Yes, it's true. It's true. Cure. And Star is phenomenal. I can't praise her highly enough, and I virtually never praise anyone. But it's true, as I was about to say, that we do have to change policies. We do have to impact legislation. We do have to construct encouraging and supportive frameworks. But at the end of the day, we're doing all that to get to the point of being able to say, leave us alone. Leave us alone. Because every effort that's been made to help us has only checked us. It held us back. We can confront the reality. I listened to Moynihan. I felt so sad for him because I have such respect for him in many ways, for his candor, and he took such grief for that report. But he was also, if you listen to him, perpetuating the lie that has caused us the greatest trouble. Ever since slavery, there's been no black father, no black family, Everybody knows that's false. Tom Sowell has shown the falsity of it. Many people have. The black family, since slavery, was intact and only began to unravel from the late 50s onward under the pressure of this burgeoning welfare dependency set in motion by the New Deal. It wasn't true that slavery defeated the black family in America. You must repeat that over and over and over again. It is a great lie. A lie in the name of which we perpetuate dependency. They have a fancy name for it. They call it the legacy of slavery. I'll tell you a story about that. I was teaching an institute here in town, young black college students, rising sophomores whom we're mentoring and preparing for professional life. And every now and again, I have these youngsters in the class, and they bring the learning from their campuses to me, and they spend a lot of time explaining why they can't do things because of the legacy of slavery. I had one youngster one day so carried away with this. In the middle of the seminar, I said, stop. Take off your jacket. He paused, took his jacket off. He didn't know why I asked, but he complied. It seemed simple enough. And then he went on with his rant. I said, stop. Take off your shirt. He looked at me a little quizzically then, but he took his shirt off, and then he went on. I said, stop. Take off your undershirt. Then he refused, and he said, wait a minute, what's going on here? I said, I want to see your scars. I don't want anybody telling me how awful slavery was when they have grown in the lap of luxury compared to what the slaves knew. You know, the idea that there is an evolution might have that much in the way of evidence for it in terms of DNA and what we inherit from our parents. But this idea that you can inherit acquired traits, that someone else would hit with a whip and therefore you bear the, no, that is false. That's Soviet Lysenkoism. That has no scientific reality. That doesn't describe even a moral imperative. It is simply false. And the falsehood is necessary to keep us beguiled, confused, deluded, unwilling to stand up and say, I'd rather do it myself. In the last of these classes, some of the young men asked me about the same kinds of questions, though they were not so much complaining, but they wanted to know, why is it they confronted the kinds of things that they hear on this score so pervasively in the name of diversity and inclusion and one thing or the other? I said, you don't understand. The people who are doing this to you aren't doing this because they love you, except insofar as you are their pets. Who wants to be kept as a pet when you have the powers that God has given to human beings? But that's what we confront. That's where we are. That's the challenge we're trying so hard, so desperately to overcome. I'm going to tell you a last story, a personal story. I've never told this before anywhere, but I'm going to share it here because I think it's really important for us to understand what we're up against. In 2004, Barack Obama became famous, making a speech at the Democratic National Convention, in which the thing for which he became most famous was a line in which, to effect, he said, there is no white America, there is no black America, there's only one America. You remember that. When I heard that, it was familiar to me because I'd published it in an essay. I said to myself, well, wait a minute, anybody could come up with that, right? I mean, he might have been inspired by Teddy Roosevelt, who complained about hyphenated Americans, so I let it go. I thought, he didn't take it from me. It's just an accident. Just, what do you call it? A coincidence. And so I let it go. The years pass. Then one day, I came across an old video from Barack Obama's book tour on Dreams of My Father when he was speaking at the Cambridge Public Library. And he, in presenting his argument from his book about the status of black people in the United States and the need for further efforts to remediate that circumstance, he criticized a particular conservative argument, as he labeled it, the argument of conservatives. Here's what the argument was about. You know, affirmative action isn't doing anything. If you want to defend civil rights, what you should do is follow a vigorous campaign of tort litigation. Make people pay when they injure you, and they will stop injuring you. Very straightforward argument. And so Barack Obama ridiculed that argument. He said, this is the argument conservatives make. But the reality is, even though if you win your case and your attorney's fees and legal costs are paid and you get the damages and compensation, poor people still can't do this because it takes $30,000, $40,000, or $50,000 to build a case. So the conservative argument just won't wash. Now, there's something wrong with the argument I think you can all see, because a community organizer drops $30,000, $40,000, and $50,000 every other week trying to teach people to lobby for affirmative action. So if you wanted to apply that money to build cases, you could easily do that. But he said conservatives are making this argument. And I got to tell you something. Nobody in the whole country has ever made that argument but yours truly. That I was called conservatives in the plural was therefore something, I suppose, of a compliment. But the conservatives never embraced that argument when I prosecuted that argument in the 1980s and 90s. I was the only voice making that argument. And I made it in the same essay in which I said there's only one America. So I decided he did read it. He just didn't want to give me the credit for it. But why? Because note what he was doing. He borrowed the power of the rhetoric to establish national credibility while rejecting the truth of the argument about the path we should be on. That's why I'm telling you the story. This is what we're up against. It is absolutely necessary to make clearly heard that we will not have our fate decided by any judgment other than our own. That's the starting point. We must do that. We must do all of the research. We must gather the statistics. We must lobby. You're going to go out to Capitol Hill, I imagine. You've got to do this. You've got to talk to people and try to gain their interest. But we must start by insisting no one else gets to make this judgment for us. And do you know why? Don't want me to tell you why? Because nobody else has the courage to do it. Nobody. If we don't do it, it will not be done. Conservatives don't have the courage to do it. Oh yes, I still call myself a conservative, and I will still go out and tell them they ought to support what we're doing and send their donations by all means. But those who in the leadership do not have the courage to do what needs to be done, to say what needs to be said. And they've told me this to my face. When I left the Commission on Civil Rights, after my term as chair, I had a session with the Wednesday group, the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives, in which I laid out for them a platform which would have made all of Starr's efforts unnecessary if they'd listened to me. But you know what they said to me on that day, in that hour, in that place? They said, "We can't do that. We would be called racist." They're cowards. You can't depend on them to stand up. There's a reason there's been such a hullabaloo about flags and statues. Because the leadership doesn't have the courage to stake out a principled position and stand on it. Now, I'm telling you this for good reason, because I want you to be practical. I don't want you to be idealistic when you go in. And I don't want you pleading, asking for favors. I want you to tell them what you want and tell them that you won't relax until you get it. Because that's the only option that we have. And yes, even if they tell us no, let's go to the end, then I'll close. Even if they say no to us, even if they don't give us the friendly legislation that we seek, we still get to go home and do it ourselves. We must reassume authority in our own homes, in our own communities. No one else gets to decide that. That is the reason I've said to people, if the government wants to hold stage so-called same-sex marriages, let it do it. Just tell them, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. You can have your license. I will marry under the word of God. I don't need your sanction to marry. If you think you can lead us that way, you go ahead and try, but you'll do it without my assistance. And that's all we have to do. We don't have to have the court make a new decision. We don't need new laws from Congress. We just need to say no. From our pulpits, in our churches, in our communities, in our homes. Just say no. But of course, I have to say yes to close. And I do say yes. I say yes to this ambitious agenda. I was looking down the list of the topics that you're going to look at. Repair, men without work. Reform that works, discovering work opportunities. restoring our heritage, the startup life, restoring civil discussion, reviving our culture and communities. What an agenda. What an agenda. You've got work to do. And I'm going to pray in closing that that work be blessed by God. So please bow with me. Father God, you have appointed this hour, and we find ourselves standing in the light it shines. We ask, O Lord, that you permit the light you shine on us to shine forth from us upon this world. Let us take up this agenda in the spirit in which you have originated it. Let it be a clarion call. Oh God, we know that there are pathways in this world that we are not to walk. And we know there are obstacles on the path that is appointed for us. But, oh God, we have faith that you will clear the obstacles, that you will lead us into the paths of righteousness for your name's sake. Oh God, touch each and every soul gathered here this evening with a special mercy. Enable us to know not only that your hand will guide us and protect us, but that its love will dwell ever with us. For it is in that spirit of love that we come to you, resilient in the face of disappointment sometimes, eager even in the presence of anxieties, sometimes, Lord, uncertain not because of lack of faith, but because of lack of power, and knowing that whatever we do, it will only be because it is you who strengthen us in the doing. And because you can in all things give us the strength, then we give you the glory. We come praising your name. We lift you up. And we ask, Heavenly Father, that our lives, not just our words, not just this moment, not just the actions of these days, but our lives will be a sustained witness to your goodness. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
If you have any questions, please contact the Cure's National Clergy Network office at 202-479-2873 or visit our website at urbancure.org.